Hey, what is up, guys? It is Satsmate Stack here, and today I'm going to talk about what drives destructive habits in the youth of America today. And you guys do not need to look far to see that there's a lot of destructive habits that many are partaking in today. So, first and foremost, I'd have to say a lot of these people are moving towards these high time preference behaviors because they don't see hope for the future as much. And this kind of happens in societies on the brink of decline because they say, well, I have no shot at getting a house, so I'm going to take this nihilistic viewpoint and just spend my money and live it up now because I don't see that hope for the future. And I think there's a lot of destructive things that are happening towards the youth of today. And I think it's so important that we take a step back and look at what is causing it and what these destructive things are. So many in the youth, I would say this is maybe fun or it's exciting in the short run, and in the long run it'll hurt. So you don't have to look far. Alcohol, marijuana, vaping, pornography. These are the big ones. And I also think like the gambling side is big, binge drinking, substance abuse, and social media addiction, scrolling addiction. I know people watch videos and TV a lot, Netflix addiction to screens and the video games and the electronics. It's getting more and more extreme as time goes on. And I think I'm starting to see why. I mean, kind of looking at some of these here on the onset, each of them, I guess, has a form of escapism. So, for example, with alcohol, it kind of numbs you a bit. It makes you a little bit more loose, and you are kind of escaping that short-term stress. So marijuana, same thing. You're kind of escaping into a new reality. And I think that's the one thing that each of these vices has in common. Because we know things are rough out there, right? So if things are rough, what can I turn to kind of ease some of that pain? And I will say all of this stuff in the short run, I think, really helps with that pain. But I think down the road, it actually ends up hurting. These are actually the same things that may feel good in the short run, hurt in the long run. It's like the people that say, oh, I need to smoke a cigarette because I'm stressed out or I need to calm myself. Well, eventually that cigarette, that nicotine becomes the stressor. And while at first it may reduce that stress, very quickly it goes from the stress reducer to the stressor. And I think we're just seeing more and more people kind of have their brains turned to mush by just, you see kids nowadays, they just open up their iPad and they just go into a video rabbit hole, right? And it's easy because the parents, they give them the iPad, they don't want to, babysit them. And so the technology is babysitting them essentially. And so it's getting kind of scary because it's also getting more extreme as time goes on. So for the youth, I think what they're seeing is like, hey, everything out there costs money. What can I do that's on the cheap and that I can stay at home and not do anything? Well, I'm just going to go and I have my iPad here. I'm going to go smoke some weed, scroll, and watch TV. And it's just kind of like this devolution inside. So I really think if there's not opportunities for upward advancement or movement in society, then people go towards these devolving activities. Because if you don't see a way up, you're either growing or you're not. You're growing or you're shrinking in life. And I think many times people decide, you know what, I'm not going to be that 1% guy, 5% guy. I'm just going to go into my vices. It's also one of those things where, and I get it, because I totally get it, but why work 50 hours a week to not even have a fraction of what your grandparents or your parents' generation had? So think about it. The average middle class salary needed to buy a house right now, you need $140,000. And the average house, at least where I'm at, it's about, in an okay neighborhood, is between $550,000 and $650,000 a year. Whereas our parents' generation, that same house would have been $250,000 to $350,000 a year. So it's more than double with rates much, much higher. So we're seeing a situation where it's much worse for the current generation. They can work a full year and maybe get half as much as what their parent or grandparents had. My grandpa told me, he's like, yeah, I bought my house for $20,000 and we paid for it cash. And that was one of their first homes. And you can't really do that nowadays. You can't really pay for a house cash unless you get a windfall from an inheritance or it's like a cheap house in the hood. So I think a lot of people are kind of going through that existential nihilism and just giving up altogether, because why work so hard if you don't see that hope on the horizon? And I think there are ways to fix this. I'm not trying to do this in make a negative episode here. I'm saying there is a way to fix this. And that is education, cheaper education, and more hands-on training at an earlier age. I think we kind of went through this, at least I'm speaking to myself, but I went through the school system kind of learning a bunch of stuff that didn't matter. And I kind of was all over the place. And I wasn't shaken hard enough being like, hey, you need to figure out something that can really impact society and make focus. I went to school just to learn, not to think, hey, how is this going to help me with my job prospects? No, it was just learn and get good grades. It wasn't like, hey, learn how a check works, learn how to balance a budget. No, it was like, what's a squared plus b squared plus c squared? What's the Pythagorean theorem? Blah, blah, blah. All this useless junk that I've never had to use once. But a lot of this stuff here, I'm telling you, I would have been much more prepared on budgeting classes or how to change a flat tire or, basic things that we need in society, or maybe how to, plumbing 101. Why didn't we have more plumbing one-on-one classes? Why did we all go into these corporate jobs and get these degrees? Now they're not worth anything due to AI being able to replace a lot of it. So I just think the education piece is so important, but education with the intent of, hey, if you're going to learn this book, how are you going to apply it to a particular career field? Not education for education's sake. So we also need people to take the prescribed path. We need people not to take the prescribed path. We need people to go and try to do things that they think are a value to society and that are an actual need to society, not things like, oh, get an accounting degree or get a software engineering degree. Because I think we're starting to see a lot of that area get disrupted, and it's like, well, wait a second. Would I have been better just doing, my labor job, my garbage truck job, or carpentry, or electrician, or whatever, right? And I think that is key as well, because the prescribed path is go get a degree, get good grades, and get your cushy corporate job. Well, what happens when those corporate jobs start to reduce 40, 50, 60, 80%? What makes you cut to make that cut? So the next thing is we need to really reject the traditional ways that have been pushed on us and try to find new ways to make an income, whether that's creating, solving a problem that the market hasn't solved, to creating our own company, to maybe starting a restaurant that's healthy or a lot of organic, healthy meats and stuff like that with no preservatives, something that we're seeing not enough of in today's society. We need hope as young people, because if we have hope, then we're going to work towards it. But if we don't see that hope, we're going to engage in habits that are not for our best selves. We're going to engage in that alcohol, drugs, vaping, etc. And we need faith in ourselves and faith in the future. And if we don't see that, then we turn to vices. I do think, and I'm not super religious, but I do think we need more religion. We need more third places and uplifting habits. When I went to Europe, I've been to Europe several times now, and one thing I've always noticed is they have a lot of third places. We don't have those here in America. Literally what we have is you go to work, you go to the gym, you come home. There's no place where you can just go and just talk to people. That doesn't exist here. That doesn't exist. I mean, you typically, when you go to a bar or a restaurant, you arrive and you talk with the people that you came with. Same thing with the tennis here. I do think pickleball has been one exception where you do get to meet different people, and it is kind of a third place. But that's not all over the place here in the United States. We need more third places. Third places, go look it up on YouTube. There could be a whole video on what a third place is, but it's essentially some social place outside of work, outside of your home, and outside of your gym. It's a place to socialize and meet people in a cheap or free way. And I think we need the opportunities to learn and grow without paying an arm and a leg. I get it. Why would you send your kids to school $60K a year and it's like, well, what if what they're learning is going to be obsolete in a few years, right? So there needs to be kind of that foresight of like, hey, how can I learn on the cheap without paying that arm and a leg? And I think those things need to grow in America. And what happens if we don't do this? What happens if we don't invest in kind of show religion, third places, constructive habits, or have opportunities to learn and grow? Well, then people will go to the least common denominator. That's scrolling, that's pornography, that's drinking and gambling and all that stuff. And look, I'm not a saint. I've definitely engaged in a few of those in the past. But what I will say is, after taking a step back and seeing that none of those things serve me as a person and my growth, I start to reject certain things that I don't believe help. And I think other people may see that as well. It's like, hey, does this actually help me and help me grow as a person? And it probably doesn't. So that's when you should give it up and focus on the future growth of yourself and for the better of our country as well. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Please be sure to comment, rate, subscribe, like, share it around, and I'll see you guys in the next one.